Thank you, Dirk, to September Women in Technology session. Before we start, I would like to start the session by thanking people who actually make this happen. Sky Co is our current executive sponsor, and I would like to see Sky and thank him for all the support he gives me and Dirk and supports this program. Sky?
Thank you, Serpil. But really, I mean, I just love the work that you do here, and thanks to everybody for coming out to this today. And I'm really looking forward to this great talk by Lauren. So, and thank you, Lauren, for donating your time to this. So,
definitely, super happy to be here.
Thank you. And then I also want to thank our program managers, Dirk Copeland. We have Dennis. Dennis, say hello so they can see what you look like if you want. And let's see. Dennis. No. Okay. And Joanne Alvarez, sorry. She couldn't be here because she has a doctor's appointment. And she said hello to you, Lauren. Maybe you remember her.
Oh, yes, I do. She's great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So before we start, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. If you have joined us using WebEx Teams, you won't be able to see the chat, I believe. So if you want to see the chat or type something in chat, you may want to hang up and come in through the WebEx meetings. And it also has very cool backgrounds now, unlike Teams. The second one is we want to make sure the session flows nicely. So we're asking everyone to mute yourselves and turn off your video during the presentation section of the event. And then we will ask you to turn on your video and unmute yourself as we move on to the Q&A section. During the Q&A, what we have been doing, if you have joined us before, is that to make it smooth, we have a WebEx Teams room that I think, Dirk, you posted on the chat. So we are asking you to please put your questions in that WebEx Teams room, and then Dirk will call your name to ask a question. And at that point, we would like you to ask the question in person so you get a chance to actually interact with Lauren, and Lauren gets to see you. So I hope that's clear. Also, when you ask questions, we appreciate to keep them as questions and not long paragraphs of statements. So we give a chance to others to ask more questions. Okay, with that, it's my great pleasure to welcome Lauren Cooney, founder and the CEO of Spark Labs, the Women in Technology program. This is not her first time. Lauren, exactly 5 years ago today, had another wonderful talk for us. As the Cisco was just starting on the open source arena, and she talked a lot about open source communities and wonderful things you can do with it and where Cisco was going with that at that time. Lauren and I have known each other for quite a while now. She was a senior director at Cisco, and I've seen her run wonderful, very interesting, very innovative programs in the past. So I'm not going to steal her thunder, and I'm going to let her introduce herself in more detail. Lauren?
Oh, Serpil, you can always steal my thunder. I am totally fine with that. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And, I think we were talking about it earlier, but I think it's very interesting that 5 years to the day ago, I was actually speaking at this same event, but we were all in person down in San Jose. So that's pretty interesting, I thought. Just, one of those fun things that happens. So I want to first frame up the conversation that we're going to have today. So today we're going to talk about different ways that you can accelerate your career and promote yourself, and how to actually do it in a way that's going to be helpful for you to get that promotion, get that salary raise that you need inside of your organization as well. And, the formulas that I run and what I talk about is things that I have, worked on for, whether it be over my 20 years experience or my, having to root for myself in doing this. It's definitely something that I care deeply about, and that I think, people need to have the right formula in terms of what to do and how to build their career strategy so that they can have a good career trajectory. So to kick things off, I'm just going to introduce myself, and then we're going to go into some of the things that are super important to know when you are building your career strategy and things that you need to learn in order to promote yourself. And then I'm going to actually go through the actual framework for what I run my clients through when they are building a career strategy. And what we actually are going to focus on for that is we're going to do a quick working session. You all have handouts that you were sent, and that will be towards the end, and then we will break and open it up for any Q&A, and we'll go from there. So hopefully you all enjoy this, and I'm happy to stick around at the end for Q&A, and I also will supply my email. So without further ado, I'm Lauren, if you haven't figured that out already. You can follow me on Twitter at @Cooney. I am pretty active on Twitter, and I'm very honest on Twitter. So if you want to follow someone that's going to be no BS, I'm probably the person to follow. I talk a lot about career acceleration. I give a lot of advice around, leadership and communication skills and how to, increase your EQ and do things like that. So if you want to follow someone on Twitter that's going to talk about how to be a great leader, then you can follow me. I wanted to put some fun facts in here, and as I go through these, I will kind of intersperse my story. I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York, and when I say upstate New York, I mean right by Syracuse, which is right by Canada. So very, very, very much in the snow belt. And I went to college in Pennsylvania, and I worked my way through college by waiting tables and doing work study programs. My family didn't have the means to send me to college on their own, so I really wanted to go to college. That was something that was on my list of things that I, wanted to accomplish in life, and so I did. I was a history major and a business double major. So I focused on two different things. And when I left college, I actually flew out to California with 2 suitcases, never having been further west than Ohio, and landed in San Francisco and joined AmeriCorps Vista, which is a program that I worked on to help people build small businesses that were not tech related. Because of my background in business and economics, I then quickly got pulled into venture capital and was 22, 23 working in venture capital down in Silicon Valley. Worked with some of the toughest people I know, some of the most brilliant minds that I know. I think it was great. It was a tremendous experience, but I didn't know enough about the technology, and I didn't know enough about the products that I felt that we were investing in. And I felt like I needed to get more education around that. So I took a job at a company called BEA Systems, which is now Oracle. They were WebLogic, if you know WebLogic Server. And I learned how to code when I was at BEA, and I learned how to code at age 23. The reason why I learned how to code is a bit of a funny story. It is, I was on stage presenting to a bunch of software developers, and I said something technically incorrect. And the chief architect of the company at the time came out and pulled me off stage in front of a bunch of software developers, hundreds of software developers, and took me to his office, sat me down in a beanbag chair, and convinced me that I needed to learn how to build my first, or he didn't convince me. He told me that I needed to build a Hello World app in Java, and I should not come back to work until I learned how to do it. So he gave me a book with a CD-ROM in it, and that's how I literally learned how to code. First, I learned Java, then I learned PHP, and then I learned some ASP.NET. I still can code. I'm not as good as I used to be, and I'm okay with that. That's actually something that I'm okay with. And I know some of your questions may be around technical acumen and getting more senior in roles, and we can discuss that at the end, but it is okay. After I was at BEA, I went to IBM, worked on some open source stuff, and ended up working for the CTO there, launching the first enterprise mashup engine. Then I went to Microsoft, where I brought in open source and PHP and got that running on Windows. I ran the web platform there, which is now Azure. So I actually ran the whole platform for Microsoft for developers. After that, I went to Juniper Networks and built a community around the beginning of what would be software-defined networking, and crafted the software-defined networking strategy there, and got hired shortly thereafter by Cisco, where I led a component of the software-defined networking strategy, open source, I brought a bunch of different products to market. One of them was the fastest product that was ever shipped at Cisco in under 6 months to a customer. And, I had a great time at Cisco. It was just a blast. And I got to meet with customers. Like I said, I've built developer communities at every single company I've been at, worked and grown them to millions and millions of developers. I've closed thousands of client and customer deals and helped companies raise over, or actually, earn over $1 billion in revenue. Most of that was at Cisco. So I've had a pretty successful career in my 20 years. And then I kind of hit a bump and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So after Cisco, I took 6 months off, and I want to get to, the point of, just understanding that you don't necessarily know what you need, what you're going to do next, but it is super important, because I hit a little bit of a slump and I got some imposter syndrome, and it was difficult for me to get out of that. And when I did get out of it, I realized that I wanted to help people in technology get ahead, get paid more, get promoted faster, and especially with a focus on women, because obviously I'm a woman, and those that identify as women, it's super important for us to feel safe and to feel that we are a part of something in organizations. And I think that organizations need to do a better job, and people need to do a better job. So that's why I'm here, and that's what we do at the company that I run now called Spark Labs. So we do executive coaching, we do one-on-one coaching, we do corporate training, and we do focus on career acceleration strategy, and also something that I call executive platform. I work with many clients all over the place, from Tesla to Google to Facebook to Red Hat, Johnson & Johnson, United Healthcare Group, GitHub, Twilio. There are more. I work mainly with Fortune 500 companies and folks that work inside of those companies, whether they're individual contributors or managers, or leaders. I work with a very broad scope of folks. And I also come in and do trainings for teams that might want to learn more about how to accelerate their career or how to build a more effective executive platform for themselves to get promoted. So that's what we do there. So I also, just FYI, sitting at my feet is a 120-pound dog named Milo, and he will be silent during this presentation. He's promised, because I'm going to bribe him with treats. So hopefully we'll hear no barking, but if you do hear a little bit of barking in the background, it's just him being a dog. So let's dig in here and let's take a deeper look at what we are looking at from a career perspective. So what we've really got is you've got your career, and that is something that is pretty central to you. But also it's important to note that you've got all of these factors that you have to balance as well. You have family, maybe you're going back to school, maybe you've got a side gig or a side job or something, kind of that you're swinging there. You've got hobbies, you've got health. We are in the middle of a pandemic now with fires blowing up the West Coast, and essentially what we're looking at is, leaders that are having to work with teams that are being displaced, even, folks that are being evacuated and whatnot. And, there's a lot of different things that come into your career, and it's important that we understand that it is not, kind of a one-on-one focus. It is actually the balance, and what you're trying to achieve is a balance that, kind of everything kind of works out together. And these are all factors. The reason why I bring this up is because this is super important as you look at your plan for how you're going to build and accelerate your career. These are the things that come into play, whether you want them to or not. So this is important to actually take a look at. So here's your career trajectory. Let me just see if I could, yeah, hopefully that solves this. Oh, there we go. So ideally, you want it to be a hockey stick. You want that trajectory. But in reality, you're looking at chutes and ladders. You maybe get promoted, but then you don't get promoted again for 3 or 4 years, and you're kind of stuck. So you got to leave a company. You leave a company up, but then you fall down another slide. So there's all of these things, like where you think that if you attain a certain title or if you attain a certain pay grade, that you've made it. And that's actually not the case. Your career continues. And it's something to consider and to think about, because at every level you're facing different challenges. So I'm going to go through this in further detail, but these are the factors in working across over probably about 70 clients, and also working and doing research on what are the critical factors that help and or hinder your career. These are the factors that you need to care about the most: your boss, your attitude, your communication and negotiation capabilities, RCAT, which means remain calm at all times, seeing the big picture, your leadership abilities, even if you are not a leader, growth mindset, and EQ and IQ. And I want to talk about these in depth because these are actually very important things that you need to work on if you're going to become more senior and build a plan for how you're going to get promoted. So I want to start out with the most important thing. And if you guys can wait for questions until the end too, I'm seeing all your questions come through, then that would be super helpful. Thanks. So the first and foremost thing that you need to work on is making sure that you and your boss get along and you are liked by your boss, because your boss is the number one most important factor of if you're going to get promoted, if you're going to get a raise, if you're going to get the big project, if you're going to be happy at that company. Your boss has so much power over that situation. And so when you are interviewing for a job, whether it be, or interviewing for a lateral move or anything along those lines, interview the hell out of your boss, because that is the one person that is the number one indicator of your success. Period. Stop. Done. You can do all the other stuff on the list and none of it will matter if you don't like your boss and your boss doesn't like you. So first and foremost, that's what you really have to care about. Second is your attitude and your ability to adapt. The only thing that is constant in this world right now is change. I think we're all facing it. Every single day, something new comes up. Whether we have a wildfire, or there's political unrest or something along those lines. The only thing that is constant is change, and it's absolutely important that you're able to adapt and you have the ability, you have a great attitude around it, because you impact and you influence people that are around you at work, and your excitement or your disappointment influences them too. So it's important to understand that your attitude can influence people for the positive and to use it for that. Communication and negotiation skills. Communication and negotiation skills are incredibly important. And I put them together because when you're working with a global workforce, and you are expected to not meet with them essentially face to face, you're expected to meet with them, over WebEx or Zoom or something of the like, or even just over the phone and emails. Communication totally changes, and you have to look at over communicating every single thing to be successful. I cannot stress that enough. Over communication is critical, and in that communication, being fair, honest, and transparent, that's going to be super critical and very important. Negotiation skills are very important. I'm going to list out some books in a follow-up email for folks, because I think it's important that if you don't know how to negotiate, you start to learn, because fundamentally life is a big negotiation. And, it's not just about if you get paid more, or if you get paid less, or if you get that title. It's different things about, how do you get people to agree to the same things and bring people together? That's really how I look at negotiations, so that great things can be accomplished. You really want to drive and build those skill sets up. So RCAT, remain calm at all times, for those of you wondering what that means. And it is a text that I used to get from my boss at Cisco, who was the CTO there, Dave Ward, and he would say, there would be what we would consider a major disaster or something occurring in the middle of a product launch or something along those lines. We all have these things that pop up. We think that they're major disasters. And he would just text me RCAAT. And that would basically mean just remain calm, because at the end of the day, if you're the person running around with your head cut off, freaking out about something that is happening, you are not the person that people want to follow, quite frankly. You're the person that people want to avoid. And I want to let that sit there for a second. So if you're the calm person that is trying to pull together a plan of action, people are going to follow you. I don't care if the house is on fire, be the person that remains calm, be the person that's creating a plan, and you will be the person that is followed. All right, this next one is, I think everyone says, oh, see the big picture, look, find the forest through the trees. Yes, you do need to understand what the big picture is, but in order to understand the big picture, and in order to actually understand what that means from the perspective of like your leadership team, what you're going to have to do in order to get there is you have to understand the different components of the business that you work in. And you work in a large global conglomerate, and that the organization, you need to understand supply chain, you need to understand P&L. And if you don't understand, you're going to be asking right now what P&L means. That is profit and loss. And that falls under the finance function and also the general management function of roles at Cisco. And if you want to lead a division at some point, you need to get P&L experience, profit and loss experience. You need to understand how sales functions. You need to understand how different regions function. You need to understand how ops functions. And you can just go and set up meetings with folks in these organizations that will gladly walk you through these sorts of things. But when you're looking at the big picture, it's extremely important to understand that unless you have all of these different components that make up this bigger picture, you're never going to be able to get there. So I encourage every single person on this call to reach out to someone in a different department that they need to learn about, in the next couple of weeks, and have that meeting and really see what you are, what you're missing out on and what you can learn about. And then next month, schedule another meeting with someone in finance and learn more about finance. There is tremendous talent just spread throughout Cisco, and I'm encouraging you to meet people and take advantage of that and while building your network. So let's get into this. Leadership abilities, even if you are not a leader. So a lot of people brought in questions. I saw some of the questions in advance and said, my boss says that leadership abilities, I need to have leadership abilities even though I'm not a leader. So what does this mean? This means, are people drawn to you? Are you someone that people tend to follow? And if you're not, why not? Do you have a positive attitude? Do you get excited? Do you encourage people to do their best work? Do you congratulate and praise people for positive intent and things along those lines? These are all very important things for leaders. And those are the muscles that you need to start to flex, even if you're on a team when you don't have any direct reports. Let's say you're running a project. That is a great way to show your leadership ability, to show that you can kind of corral the cats and bring everyone together and execute on something amazing. And that is something that can go on your resume. That is a resume builder, and it is something that you definitely want to focus on. So if you see the opportunity for stretch projects or to lead different efforts, this is something that you definitely want to take an advantage of, even if you don't think you have all the skills. Even if you've got 3/4 of the skills or 50% of the skills, reach out, see if you can take that lead, see if that's a fit for you. And it's important that you do that and you take that risk. You want to get ahead, that's what you do. Growth mindset. Oh, this is a loaded term, I feel like, because everyone is talking about, employees need to have a growth mindset. Well, let's talk about what the growth mindset isn't. A growth mindset is the person that says, that's not the way we do it here. That's not a growth mindset. When you started a new company and there's ways that people go about things and you find a better way to go about it, you're using your growth mindset. You're actually solving problems. You are, really the goal here is to be data-driven, to be curious, to be continuously learning. And these things are so important when you are looking at building out your leadership skills. And also when people look at your potential, which is something that falls into your trajectory, then it is important that you showcase that you are willing to learn at every single stage of your career. It doesn't matter if you've been in role for 3 years or for 30 years, you still need to learn how to grow. And if you don't know how to grow, you need to go out and find a hobby so that you can find something that you want to learn about and really pique that curiosity and pique that interest. Emotional maturity. Now, it was, I would say emotional maturity is something that everyone needs to have, and even the best people in the room sometimes don't have it at certain times. It ebbs and flows, I think, situationally. But the goal here is really about your emotional intelligence and your intellectual intelligence. And I want to focus more on your emotional intelligence here, because when you are growing and you are working with people that have lots of things going on, they are, educating their kids at home, they are working on, trying to launch a product and, manage getting dinner on the table for the family at the same time, and they've got phone calls during that dinner time. These are things that are require empathy and understanding. I was just talking to a client last week who had half of her team had to evacuate up in Portland because of the fires. And she was not frustrated. She was not angry. They're all working on a big project with a big timeline. She was empathetic because they are having to leave their homes that might burn down. You have to put yourself in other people's position and think about it from their perspective, and then you can act as a leader. It's super important to just really see where people are coming from and where their stressors are if you're going to be an effective leader. So I want to talk a little bit about this new book that just came out from David Rubenstein. And David Rubenstein's out of the Carlyle Group. And the Carlyle Group is an organization that has access to the top world leaders. This was literally just on MSNBC the other day. And so some of the things that actually were factors that helped determine success for this, for leaders. These are facts. These are characteristics that he drew from in terms of, who he interviewed for this book, which was, Gates and Oprah and Bezos and folks that you can see on the cover there. But top leaders came from lower income backgrounds and had to be creative to get where they are today. Creative is the key word there. All right. Leaders, these leaders in particular, these top world leaders, overcame difficulties earlier in life that helped them develop the grit and persistence needed to be successful in leadership. And grit and persistence right there. So right there, you've got creativity, you've got grit and persistence. And then coming from this background helped these leaders communicate effectively with people from all different walks of life. So these, being creative, grit and persistence, communication, and understanding that everyone is equal is very important as you're moving forward in your career and looking at these characteristics. You're going to get pushed down 20 times, you're going to have to get up 21. That's just the bottom line. And if you want to be successful in your career and in this program, you've got to develop these things. And I know I'm coming across a little bit strong here, but I feel extremely passionate about this and I want people to be successful. So instead of, kind of hand waving and saying, well, what do you think you need to develop? And what do you think are the skills that you need to grow? I'm just going to be pretty honest and tell you, these are the ones that you need to build. So what else do you need? You need a go-to-market plan for yourself. How are you planning your career today? Are you taking note? Is it on a notepad? Is it in a journal? Is it, do you have a coach? Or how are you planning? How are you trying to improve your career? Because you and only you, and I will stress that again, only you are responsible for your career. Planning will take you further than no plans at all. I was given a mentor when I just joined BEA Systems and I was in a high potential program. And they gave me a mentor that was a vice president, and he walked into the room and we sat down for our first meeting and he said, all right. He's like, where do you want to be in 10 years? And I said, looked at him like he was crazy. And I said, I have no idea. Maybe we could start with like a year. And he said, no, I want to know where you're going in 10. And I said, well, I can't answer that today. And he stood up and he looked at me and he said, okay, when you can answer that, let me know and we'll have our next meeting. And he left the room. And so I determined, that I wanted to be more senior in focus on product. And so what, he did was he was willing then to have another meeting with me. But if you can plan for 10 years out, you're going to get there faster. You're going to get there in 5. And I will tell you, when I knew that I wanted to run product teams, I told them I wanted to run product teams, that was my 10-year goal, not my 5-year goal. I hit that within 3 years. So you have a plan, you're going to get there faster. I want to talk a little bit about tasteful self-promotion under this umbrella too, because you need to learn how to talk about yourself in a way that is positive and quite frankly is, it has confidence in it, because you're going to be pitching yourself as you go up the corporate ladder, and you need to become more confident in that pitch. So this framework that I'm going to show you here also forces a simple and understandable way to think and talk about your role, your job, and your goals. And that's going to be very important. So what is this exactly? This is a go-to-market plan. This is a plan for you. This is our career acceleration framework. Sorry, I didn't change that last word there. It's a fast and easy to shift, adaptable to career twists and turns. And that is a great word there, adaptable, because your career will change. It provides clarity on goals, stakeholders, investments, and more that you need to be successful. And it creates actionable steps that you can actually follow. Because most plans are these, I think we've all been through yearly planning cycles and things like that. And the hours and hours and hours that go into trying to connect the dots and create goals and figure out how much revenue is going to be generated or best guesses and stuff like that. But it's important for you to really look at yourself as someone that needs to be invested in. And this is why it's important for you. This plan also travels with you from role to role, company to company, and IC to leader. So it grows with you. So let's take a look at what this career acceleration framework is. And this is really digging into it. And this is a simple framework that, like I said in my previous slide, allows you to, this is your go-to-market plan that allows you to look at the different stakeholders, look at the different ways you reach those stakeholders, look at the relationships you have with those stakeholders, look at the resources that you're going to need to get from point A to point B in your career, point C, quite possibly. What are the activities? What are who are the partners, and how will they help you scale what you're trying to do? Because you always want to get the word out about yourself too, because you need to network. And then what are the costs and benefits that are going to be achieved here? So whether they're negative or they're positive, you need to list them both. So let's take a look at what this actually means. And there's a lot of content in here. So this slide is the one, you have this slide. You also have this slide, and it was sent to you this morning by Serpil. So if you want to pull these up, you're going to be able to view them a little bit better. Or if you want to, if you've printed them out, that is actually the best thing. But the core value proposition here is really the first thing you want to focus on. So what do you do well? What core competencies do you deliver to your audience? What needs are you satisfying of that audience, and how? What benefits do you provide that are different than others? So, for example, are you, what is your offering? Are you building open source code? Are you coding for a certain project? Are you the relationship manager for a certain partnership, and you're the only person that has that sort of partnership? What is your core value proposition? And next, who are the people that you're helping with that value proposition? So who are your most important audiences? You want to list out 3. And with that, it's you need to look at who you're creating value for, and what is each audience's unique need as well. So for example, maybe one of the stakeholders here is the audience segments is your boss, and your boss needs to roll information up to his vice president. So You're creating value for your boss that is then in turn, helping you out. Maybe you're creating code for a big open source project and maybe the community depends on you. So maybe a stakeholder is your community, or your stakeholder is your family, your kid, the person that you are on Zoom trying to teach with right now. These are all audience segments and it's all viable for when you're building something like this out. So your distribution channels, how do you reach these audience segments? So if it's your boss, that's pretty easy. But what if you're looking for a job instead? How do you reach them? Are you reaching them on Twitter? Are you reaching them on LinkedIn? Are you putting your code on GitHub? How are you actually doing your self-promotion, getting visibility? Are you getting speaker engagements? What are those speaker engagements? This category right here is where you get really specific about the activities that you have to start doing to reach your audience. So then your audience relationships, how do you interact? So once you have the distribution channels, you get to them. How do you interact? So what do you say? How do you build that relationship, whether it be with your boss, with partners, with peers? How do you establish that trust? How do you show them that value? And then key resources. What do you need? What do you need to get there? Right? Do you need headcount? Do you need budget? Do you need your boss's support? Do you need some CYB, which is cover your butt from your boss? If you're going to be doing something a little daring. And I think that those are really areas that the key resources are super important to flesh out, because you want to understand, like, let's say you are taking a course to go back to school, that requires some budget. So figuring out what that budget's going to be, when you're going to go back to school, planning, these are all critical things. So then the activities, how are you going to do it? How are you going to make that happen? What key activities does the value proposition require, right? So are you speaking? Are you attending events? Are you writing articles? And then how are you going to scale that? Well, partners are the best way to scale. I'm going to say that right there. So when you're looking at your partnerships, think of your network. Think of your network in terms of who your LinkedIn folks are and who the folks are that are, your key supporters, whether it be mentors or sponsors or, friends, or your WIT group, for example. These are the key partners that are really going to help you be successful. So, and your boss, of course. I, didn't mean to skip over that, because that is the number one indicator of your success. But these folks really have to be on board. And then number 8 is looking at the costs and the benefits. And you have to look at this from a personal and professional perspective. So what are the most important costs in your work or to your work? Are you going to be taking up some family time, doing longer hours? What are the key resources and activities that are most important? This is where you start to look at things and prioritize and say, maybe that can't be done. Maybe this can be done instead. So this is the category where you're listing out the kind of the pros and the cons, and you're going back and you're saying, all right, can we do this? So then collectively, once you have all of this listed, you have a plan, and you can either do it in a document that is like this, where you just list them out. You can use pen and paper, or also you can use a Trello board. I use Trello boards when I work through this with my clients. Trello's free, and you can put different cards below each one anyways. So that is a great way to kind of showcase some of that. So, right now I want to take about 3 to 5 minutes maximum for you to put pen to paper and write down a couple different things in those categories. And when you do, I want you to think about this. I want you to plan for 5 to 10 years out and be as specific as you can. Understand that shifts will occur and you need to expect change, but the general trajectory will be trending upward for you. And then make a list. What brings you joy? What do you dislike? Add these relevant things into your career acceleration framework, because they are important, and they will be influential when you are making choices moving forward. So right now, I know that we just went through a lot of information, and I'm going to put this slide back up. and ask that we spend about 3 minutes working on this. And also, this can also be a period for if we have any questions that are specific to this framework in terms of how you are completing it. I still have a little bit more of the presentation to go through, and then we're going to open it up to general Q&A. But first, I want to take any 1 or 2 questions that are around how to complete the framework.
And it would be good if you can post those either in the chat or the WebEx Teams, and I will ask Dirk to call the name. I think somebody was talking that I interrupted. We can start with that person. I didn't mean to make it so rigid, but just to have some flow. Please go ahead, whoever it was. Maybe not.
I see some questions coming in, but I can't see the...
I think everyone is working diligently on the framework.
Okay. So there is one question about how frequently you revisit this and how frequently, and I revisit this. I have this for myself, for my own business. This was also some of these areas where this is some familiarity of the business model canvas, which is something that I tend to use for products that I take to market. And I think it's a great model. And so I've implemented some of those practices inside of this model, but essentially every 6 months to a year is how often I update this for myself.
Could you flash that next slide, please, where you had the plan and shifts?
Sure. This one?
Yeah, this one. Thank you.
You're welcome. What?
The other question I have, Lauren, is that are you going to share the slides with the team after the meeting?
So we're going to send the recording out, and I'm actually going to include the templates again, and then also additional tips and suggestions. But I will not be sharing these exact slides.
Okay.
And you will have the recording. Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is that, like, in that career framework, is like very thorough list. Like, what if we don't know how to put together it? Like, you have a section saying how to get there, who we are going to interact with. Like, what if it's not clear to us?
It's put the best guess in there. So for example, if it's not clear, what I would do is that's also when you like put your best guess and investigate. And if that's not the right thing, then investigate again, because you need to figure out what the path is, right? And that goes for what your existing path is too, because you may be going down the wrong path. You may not be engaging the right people that have for example, let me back up and give you an example. Let's say that you're in a product operations role and you aspire to go into a VP of strategy and planning role, right? How do you know that you're actually getting there and that you're talking to the right people? Well, the first thing that I would do is I would seek out someone who has that strategy and planning role at that level that I want to achieve. And I would send them an email and say, hey, do you have 30 minutes on your calendar where I could, pick your brain a little bit and learn about how you got where you are and some of the awesomeness that you've done, right? And at the end of that meeting, make sure that you ask to see if you can do anything for them as well. And you get to find out more if that's something that you want to do in your career or if it's not. And then you're better able to put the next kind of path stone in front of you saying, yes, I am going on the right path, or no, I wasn't. And now I kind of have to figure out what the next step is. And so have another meeting. Start talking to people, start building that network, and start using that network to reach out and figure out if that is the right path that you're going to be on.
Yeah, the other
Hi, Lauren. Lauren, should we continue on with the presentation? We were going to jump into QA right around 12:30. I mean, and then we can kind of shuffle some of these questions, or we could do a few more questions. I mean, depending on.
Yeah, we can. Let me just finish up, and then we can go into Q&A. Because I actually have, if y'all get quiet or something, I've pulled out some questions too. But
We have plenty of questions as well. Yeah.
Okay.
But
All right.
I'm gonna ask for the Q&A section for Dirk to call the names so that you can actually see the people asking.
Sure.
But let's finish the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So, just in closing, you can use this, like I use this template, like I said, 6 months to a year. So I revisited this when last week when I was actually doing that. And one of the things that I may do is if it's going to be helpful for folks, I can mock up something that I would have used back when I was in the corporate world and include that as a sample. That may be helpful, or I can see if one of my clients might be willing to share theirs. And I can send that out with the recording, but keep it simple. Really don't overthink it. It's meant to have details in there, but not so detailed that you can't change it, that you can't kind of literally see the forest through the trees, to use something we just talked about earlier. Keep it actionable. You want to keep movement going forward. Forward movement is important when you're looking to get that upward trajectory for your career. So if you take one step back, that is fine. Just make sure your next step is 2 steps forward so that you can keep moving on the same path and at the same pace. To reach me, you can email me at lauren@sparklabsco.com or follow me on Twitter at @lcooney, and you can DM me. My DMs are totally open. And I'm open to taking, questions or anything like that. And also, when I send out the email, I want to make sure that I'm going to be providing a discount for my services for all attendees. So I'll include that in there too, just so folks get some further benefit out of this if you want to take it a little bit further. All right. So I think that's it.
All right, thank you so much, Lauren. I'm right about now, I'm gonna just call different people's names that have been posting questions either in the chat room or in the WebEx Teams. And then you can go ahead and turn on your video if you like, if you're comfortable turning on your video, and then
sure.
unmute yourself. And so the first question that I have, Maureen Folds, if I somehow am not pronouncing your name, you can reintroduce yourself. But Maureen, if you want to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and then you can go ahead and ask Lauren your question.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have any advice or feedback for people who want that fulfilling career path, but know that they don't want to be an executive. Personally, I'm a first-time manager right now. I want to go, a bit further. I don't want to sacrifice family and sanity, for the 24-hour life, the 24-hour, 24/7 lifestyle.
You don't want your boss calling you at 4 a.m. with an emergency?
No.
I've never had that happen.
So just, any...
I would say, so what I would do is, I mean, you're actually at an advantage because you actually know literally what you're planning towards. So you're planning to get to a certain level, and then you can still grow, you can still learn, you can still become a better manager. You can actually become more specialized in specific areas, even if you want, right? And you don't have to sacrifice that. And I think also, just to back it up and even put it into the bigger perspective, what I'm seeing is the folks entering the workforce right now and pretty much age 25 and below are great about their work-life balance, and they're forcing companies to start rethinking it. So I think within the next couple of years, you're going to see a little more balance and a little less business. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question. I'm posted on the WebEx Teams room. Maggie Men, if you want to turn on your video, if you like, and then unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. I just had a question about, any advice for introverts to reaching out for support and, opportunities. Sometimes it's really difficult to open up for, what's in the mind for introverts. So any advice on how that can help?
So let me ask you to clarify that question a little more. Can you give me a scenario where that might have occurred?
Okay, so like for one scenario is like, I might be interested in doing something which is not my current experience built up for.
Yep.
Like I want to try some different career role, but I don't have enough experience. Looks like I need to get some support in getting me there. But how do I find that support? I know a lot of people in my current role, I can get that kind of support, but going to some totally different new terrain, I don't have support. I have to go look for totally different people. Like you mentioned, talking to somebody in finance. Yes. I know nobody in their area.
That's okay. I know people in finance, and you can ping me, and I will find you someone. No problem. Seriously, I'm serious. Ping me over Twitter, and I will give you a name.
Okay.
And I think what you need to do, so this is how I used to, this is a little trick I used to use when I was at Cisco, because the company was so big that I couldn't find the right roles and the people that I was looking for. So I would type in a title in LinkedIn, and then I would type in Cisco as a current company, and I would literally search for the person whose bio I thought was strongest and mapped most effectively to my background, which was software. Right. So I was looking for someone with a background that had a similar background, had gone into maybe something a little bit different, and that I could reach out to. And I would friend them on LinkedIn so they would have some sort of familiarity with my name. And then I would circle back and I would ping them internally on Cisco and say, hey, I think you've got a phenomenal background. I am very interested in what you're doing. I was wondering if I could have 30 minutes of your time for you to walk me through some of it. And so I could learn a little bit more. And most people will, 95% of these people will say yes. And if they say no, you know what? You don't want to talk to them anyways.
Do you think 95% people will respond? Because, from my experience, I also got people, reaching out from LinkedIn, somebody I never know before, but I have limited time. I don't respond to any.
Well, I think that there in that, right, is something that you might want to look at doing. So if it's actually a credible question and comes from a credible source, right, that you make sure that you do take time to give back a little bit, but also look inside of the company, look inside of Cisco, because if you're building for Cisco, right, or if you're looking, maybe there are, at a company similar to Cisco, there's someone that your friend knows or something like that has a similar role. That would be fair too, right? You're really just trying to investigate more not what the company is about, but more what the role is about and what are the things that you're going to be learning and working on. But if someone doesn't respond, try the next person.
Got you. Thank you.
And be persistent.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, next question, Regina Evans, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I was asking a question in regards to Lauren. I wanted to find out what you think about the individual who is currently in the latter half of their career. They're in that last stretch of 10 to 15 years. How would you advise them as far as trying to grow their career?
It depends on what you really want to be doing. So I would say that it's always important to get a gut check. I have a resource that I will share publicly, and I'll share it in the follow-up email, and it's a joys and dislikes list, literally. And you go through it, it's a T-chart. And I say joy because joy is permanent and happiness is fleeting. So you want to write down what in your job currently you have joy in. And then in your job currently, on the flip side, what you dislike. And you got to take a hard look at that and say, what do I want on the table and what do I not want on the table? And then from there, you need to figure out how you're going to be able to get that done. So it might be, for me, in my business, I really, I get tired of receipts, right? I wanted someone, it seems like a small thing, but it becomes enormous after a while. And, so I figured out a way to outsource that, right? And then I figured out a way. I figured out I had to get, in order to outsource that, you have to figure out like that frees me up for that gives me an extra like 7 hours a month that I can go, potentially talk to new clients or potential customers, or take more time walking my dog, whatever that might be, right? So it's whatever is freeing me up to give me more time on my joy list. I can, that's why I have the dislikes list too, and I'll be sending that out. But also, I saw you asked that question earlier too when you're registered, right?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
I saw that. Yeah. So ping me offline and you and I can have a chat, because I have
Perfect.
some other ideas for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're in my slide, literally.
All right, I have another question from Emily Tseng. Are you with us, Emily?
Sorry.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi. I have a question in regards to whether or not there is additional support from Cisco's HR team that is able to help out somebody like me who is a millennial is trying to seek, to plan out a future career, whether with or without Cisco, and so that we have a much better idea of trying to move forward and get advanced to a certain level that we feel comfortable of.
So you're wondering if there's Cisco resources.
Yeah.
So you have, or when I was at Cisco, and Serpil might be able to circle back and check this out. When I was at Cisco, there was something called a learning and development budget that I had that every single employee is given at the beginning of the year, right? And I don't know how much that is, but it is in the thousands of dollars. It maybe it's 2,500 or something like that. And this was back in 2016, so it was a couple of years ago. But you do get that money, and most managers that I have worked with actually don't use it.
Oh.
So go to your boss, find out if you have that professional development money, and find out how you can use it, because you should have some. That should not be a budget that is cut. That is a separate budget from your organizational division. And it should still be there. And you can utilize that to hire a coach, to augment any services that Cisco might offer some of, right? Or to do any career planning, things along those lines, or to take a class.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
Emily, I don't know any career planning program Cisco-wide. If there is one, it's probably departmental. I do know that there used to be a jump program for helping those high potential women to get some leadership skills. I think
Serpil, there's
might
not.
be some.
They have coaching. So there's coaching that you can go to your boss and see if they have the ability to offer you coaching. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I do know that professional development fund is there.
Okay.
Your boss might be willing to sponsor a coach. I actually did that once. I actually hired the coach myself, but then my boss said I have the budget, and he picked up the post. So it's worth checking.
Okay, will do. Thank you very much.
And Emily, on my website too, there is a link for how to ask your boss for things in a way that will be effective. So literally you can go and download a PDF and copy and paste it and just send it to your boss. It's already got all the right verbiage in there for you for whatever, and just, for whatever you want, you just, fill in the blanks.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
I try to make life easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, next question, Harisha Deshmuth.
Hi, my name is Harsha Deshmukh, and my question is around the lines of self-promotion, actually, the art of self-promotion. So, how do we exactly self-promote ourselves without looking as if we were self-bragging about our accomplishments? Because generally, our immediate co-workers do know about our contributions, but how to be explicit in during self-promotion?
So there are different ways that you can go about that. It depends on, your colleagues may know about what you do, but the people on the outside of Cisco may not know about what you do. So it's important that you start blogging, and you can blog on Medium or LinkedIn or something around those lines, or Cisco also. If you talk to your boss, you may actually get the opportunity. There's so many Cisco blogs that you can blog on about all the cool stuff that you've been doing. Getting your name out there is actually the first and foremost and most important thing. Once people start to know who you are, you can brag, right? Because they're like, oh, who is this person? And oh, I heard about her, right? And that's when you can start to really kind of say, I did this and I did this. And also, if you're coming in to a company and you have a couple of years of experience, or a decade of experience before you, they may not be fully aware of what you're doing. That wouldn't be the first thing I talk about, because really you want to build that relationship and that trust first. But over time, saying, in the past I did it, and we did it this way, and it was actually super effective. Can I talk to you a little bit about that? Right? Or like why it was so successful doing this, something along those lines, not in a, I tend to do it not in a way that's bragging, but more in a way that's teaching. And if I can come across like that, then it tends to be accepted, especially by men, more effectively.
Thanks. Thank you for
You're welcome.
All right, next question from WebEx team, Alice Pollard.
Awesome. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
My question was really, around how long should you stay in a role for? When I first entered the workforce, it was like 7 years. We were told you shouldn't move. That's how long you need. Obviously, that's quite different now. So is there a recommended time for how long you should spend before looking for a new opportunity?
Well, I think that, so I just did a TikTok video on this because some guy on Twitter said that you shouldn't leave your job. You should stay in a job for 5 years, every single job for 5 years. And that's not the case anymore. I would say, let's take let's just say within a year, I had a job for 6 months, and then I didn't like the company anymore. So I left and I took another job, right? I should probably stay in that job for probably, unless there's things that are going wrong inside the company and I feel like I'm not in a safe spot. That is, if you are in that situation ever, leave. Just don't tolerate. You can't tolerate that. And if you can't get out of it, DM me. I will get you out of it. But the thing is that, I would stay in that role for I would say 2 years is probably good. But also if you're growing and your trajectory is moving up and you're getting more offers, there's no reason why you shouldn't take that offer if you think you're going to stay at that company for a considerable amount of time, genuinely. And then if you get another offer in 8 months or a year and a half, jump. You don't need to stay. You don't need to stay for, I would say, 2 to 3 years is the average that I'm seeing right now. But beyond that, I mean, when you get to, I'm going to be really honest here. When you get to like the senior director, vice president, SVP roles, they're folks that have been in role for a long time there. So, it's going to take a couple more years for that to kind of roll out. So then you're going to see more people rolling up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing to that? As a hiring manager and a leader of hiring managers, if there's hiring managers on this call, length of service in a position is a pretty poor signal for anything you're looking for. So let's look at other things way before we look at that. Next, if you're looking for work and you're picking up signals that place is treating that as a high signal, they might not be the best organization to work for. And that might be a negative signal for you. Just a thought there.
Yep. Totally agree. Thank you, Sky.
All right, next question from the chat room, Leo Augusto. Are you with us, Leo?
Yeah, I was just expanding a little bit on the previous advice to contact somebody when you're joining a new area. So I was wondering if establishing a mentoring relationship and maybe like working with the person for a couple of days just to see how the work goes, joining meetings, being side by side. I was wondering if these kind of things can help you moving to a new area.
Absolutely. And if there is no formal program, you can do that informally. When I was at Cisco, if someone or sent me a note and said, "Hey, I was wondering what it's like to do this," I would bring them into, a day or two with me, and they would attend the meetings that they could attend, right? Because there are some meetings that you can't. But definitely I was overjoyed that someone wanted to follow me around. I thought it was the coolest thing. So I think it's great if you do that. And I think it really is, it shows people that you ask to, that what they're doing is really meaningful, and you think that it's pretty rad. So yeah, I would say go for it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next question from Kate Sweet.
Kat.
Kat, sorry.
That's okay. Hey, I'm a Cisco alumna.
Hey,
so my question is, what's your advice for trying to suss out whether you think you would prefer to lead a team or be a senior level leader, or be a senior level IC? I've never been a people manager before, so kind of only seen one side of things.
Yeah, no, I think everyone needs to experience leading at least one or two people in their career. I think that it is, and I think it's important to try it out, right? And you're going to find out really quickly if you like or you don't like it. You're going to know, right? There's this mix of, you become a people manager, and there's this mix of, everyone's excited for being a leader, right? But there's also overhead. There are performance reviews. There are things that you have to approve. There are all of these other things that, aren't kind of on the radar when you get initially excited about being a leader. But the first question I always ask people is, are you an introvert or an extrovert, right? And do you like people in general? And do you get along with lots of different people? And then the question becomes, I start to ask about empathy, right? And if people have empathy and they can see themselves in others' positions, because sometimes people want to be leaders that shouldn't be leaders. And we all know that there are people like that out there, and it's unfortunate, but that's the case. And so we work to help them. But if you want to try being a leader, I would try it. And I would say, hey, talk to your boss or talk to someone and say, like, would it be possible if, I had this intern work for me for 6 months and I just tested it out, right? Because that's a very kind of low risk way to go about it, and see what you like, and then look at what you like and look at what you don't like, figure out your pros and cons list, and go from there. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next question on Megan Halton.
Hey folks, hi Lauren.
Hi.
Actually, just before I ask my question, somebody mentioned the JUMP program earlier. That is still going on, and it's really good. And they have a very similar, they call it a career blueprint, but a very similar kind of Canvas framework to what you showed us today. It's great. So the question that I have is, how do you interview a potential new boss?
Very carefully. So there's a couple of questions that I like to put into the mix, other than just, I like to find out why they're there. Why do they come to work every day? What inspires them, right? And in that role, and why they like being a team leader for the team. And then I also ask them, what are the qualities that they think are most important for people that are joining the team? Because you want to make sure that you're a map. And also in that quality list is likely to come out the qualities that they look for and that they are morally grounded with, right? Like honesty and trust. I'll tell the story, and I don't think my old boss from Cisco would mind, but when I first started working at Cisco, I could not crack the nut of like how to work with my boss most effectively, right? And it was literally this exercise for 3 months of me trying to impress him and then, do things for him. And it just always felt like it was failing and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I was kind of called off to the side with this big customer, this big client that was going kind of sideways, and I fixed it and he heard about it and I evidently had done him a super solid by doing that and he started to trust me. And so it was literally just a time thing. Usually it comes down to trust. And if you think you're going to be able to trust that person, also, I have a little experiment that I do where I like to go to lunch with them and see if I enjoy having lunch with them, because you're going to be at multiple meals with that person. Having a meal with someone is actually pretty intimate in a weird way. Like, you get to know someone really fast and if you're comfortable with them or not. And I like to use it as my litmus for whether I'd be able to work with someone or not. So that's a mix of like advice plus some tips thrown in there that you can actually really use.
Thanks a lot.
Of course.
All right, next question from Yamal. George, you can repronounce yourself if I got your name wrong.
Hi, yes, my name is Jamal. Thanks, Lauren. The question I have is, when you do a good project, a good job in the project, is that an indication that one is ready for promotion? And a follow-up to that is like, if the boss says, just have patience when it comes to promotion, how do you take that as, and what would be a good follow-up questions to ask to bring clarity and find out where you are in the queue or how long it takes?
So I actually have a video on my Instagram, which is the same, which is L Cooney, LCOONEY, that is on IGTV, that literally is the formula for how you go and ask for a promotion. And what that actually is that you need to be executed. So there are levels or bands, right, that you are in. So whether it be like a level 14 or 15 or 13 or 12 or 10, whatever it may be, you have gotten a certain level. So if you're a level 10, you need to be operating at some of the capacity for what a level 11 would be operating at already. So you need to be having some of the skills for the next level. You need to be showcasing that you have the leadership ability and the emotional maturity to go into that role. You also have to be executing at that level to some extent, not entirely, but to some extent. So what I would actually suggest, if you're a certain level and you're trying to get to that next level, you need to understand what the goals are for that next level. So you need to talk to your boss and find out if you can get the description for what that next level is and what the requirements are. And then you have at least a path to start looking at what you might need to learn or what you might need to start working on.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And if your boss won't give that to you, they should give it to you, but HR will.
Okay, cool.
All right, another question. I'm actually from one of our program managers, Dennis Chen, had a question, I think, on behalf of his sister.
Dennis, all right.
Hi, Lauren.
Hey.
I am asking this question for my sister who's just graduating from college, actually just in the past month. And she has a question because she will be entering the same organization and the same team as her boyfriend. And she has this question about what's your advice in terms of balancing building your career as well as maintaining the personal relationships while working on the same team for the same organization.
Is the organization aware of that?
I don't believe so. No, not yet.
Okay. Why don't we take that question offline?
Sure thing.
Yeah, you can ping me and we'll have a one-on-one. There's a couple different ways to go about it, but happy to do that. But it's a longer answer. So
sounds good.
Perfect.
Okay, next question from Catherine Master.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. So I'm a new hire and I just
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I just started up with the company a few weeks ago. And I was wondering if Cisco had a formal shadow or mentorship program that would help connect like new hires to leaders across the organization.
I bet they do. I would ask your boss or your group's HR business partner about it, and they will connect you with that. And if you don't, there is through WIT, there might be that opportunity. And there's also, and I meant to put a slide in here about it, but if you are a woman or identify as a woman, there's a private community that you can join through Spark Labs, and it's not revenue generating or anything. I actually pay for it myself out of my own personal pocket, and it's a community for women or those that identify as women. There is no human resources, there are no recruiters in it, and it is where we kind of discuss tough things and career promotions, bosses, having our discussions, and we have a weekly meeting that you might benefit from. So if you go to the website sparklabsco.com under community, you'll see a link to join, and anyone can join. It doesn't cost anything, as long as you're a woman or you identify as one and you are not in HR or a recruiter. And I would suggest that also as well for a mentor.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that there is no Cisco-wide mentorship program, but there are a bunch of pockets of mentorship programs, like Lauren said. So ask around and look at the chat. There are a few suggested.
Okay, thank you so much.
Definitely. Congratulations again. It's awesome. You're going to have such a fun time.
Thank you.
So I think, Lauren, I know you're probably getting tired, but we're going to have 2 more questions. Is that okay?
Fine. I'm not tired. This is great. I love this.
Okay. All right.
I was getting a little concerned. You're firing off responses, doing a great job.
Thank you.
Another question from Marina Rodriguez. Are you with us, Marina?
Yes, Mariana. It's great. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for all your testimonies. I've been in Cisco for 11 years, and I've seen a lot of changes, especially in the past 3 years, and I'm very excited to be here. I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with situations or behaviors that are out of your control? It could be politics, it could be environment, and to keep focus on our longer objective.
Yep. So I'll give you a story from when I was in my career. When I was during 2008, I was at Microsoft, and that was during a massive economic downturn, very similar to kind of what we're going through now. What we're going through now is a little more, difficult, but it was a tough time for the company. It was a tough time for people at the company. And I think that there are a couple of things that I want to take from that. One is that when you can't control your environment, the only thing that you can control is your reaction to it. And as I grow in my own career and my own maturity, I have realized that things that take up a lot of energy, that do not have a lot of benefit, I do not want to engage with anymore. Right? So I really try to work on spending my energy on things that are positive and are going to have a great net result, or working with great teams and collaborating with teams. And if it is a high impact, high energy effort, I will participate. But if it is high energy, low impact, I will not. So a lot of this is energy management that I take a look at, and there's books around this too. But I think the other thing is, and I'll just say it like it is, when shit hits the fan, put your head down and focus on what's right in front of you, and you're going to come out of it just fine.
Thank you for that.
Good advice. One last question, Yumeng Chi.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Lauren, for sharing your experience and
definitely
teaching. Thank you so much. I think I have learned a lot. So my question is, I have been doing the same thing for more than 8 years in a startup. Our startup was acquired last year by Cisco. So I'm thinking of learning something broad. But our small startup now, I feel I don't have a lot of network and resource in Cisco. How can I break? How can I get into this system and try to learn more roles than our old company?
I think
And yeah,
you're
I have
doing it right now.
I'm doing, and also I have a lot of fear inside. So how can I overcome the fear?
So, I think, so I actually, until I started in, until I got into probably like, I was like 3 years into tech, I was an introvert, and then I switched to be like more of an extrovert. And I think largely that was because I realized that I was only going to be successful as the network that I built, right? So being brave and taking that risk and reaching out to one person first and the next person again, and then a follow-up person, and starting with folks in this WIT group might be a good way to start, right? Because everyone here is everyone here is like a really good person with a great background, and they're safe people to do. And I'm looking at these names, and I know a bunch of folks here, and they've got tremendous backgrounds in a lot of different areas. So I would suggest starting there and looking up, it depends on what you want to look at, in terms of what you want to learn or what you might want to hear about. But, I would go to LinkedIn and put Cisco under, current company, and then look at who works in finance or who works in operations or who works or who is doing a specific kind of coding, right? Or things along those lines. And then reach out to them and say, hey, like I said earlier, hey, I really admire your background and I would like to learn a little bit more about what you're doing. Do you have 30 minutes for an informational meeting?
Okay, thank you. So you just mentioned that you decided to change yourself from introvert to extrovert. How did that happen? How were you able to do that?
I was able to do what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Change yourself from introvert to extrovert. Can you really do that?
I think I got embarrassed so many times. I think I did so many things. I think I made so many mistakes in my first 2 years in the corporate world that were genuinely, I was trying very hard and I was working very hard, but they're just mistakes that you make along the way. That, I stumbled and I stood back up, and I stumbled and I stood back up. And, at some point I think I stumbled and I just kind of laughed at the amount of times I was stumbling. And it just kind of hit me that, I can do this. I can stand back up. It's all right. It's okay to make these mistakes. And most people are very cool with it. It's part of the learning process, and introducing yourself and maybe fumbling over your words at first. No one cares. It's fine. I think people are more interested. People are very excited when you are interested in them. And that is something to consider when you reach out. So they're going to take it as a compliment. Most people will.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it really encouraged me. Thank you.
If you need more encouragement, you know where to find me on Twitter, and I will definitely encourage you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Of course.
Right. Let me jump in and just say thank you everyone for all the great questions. Just a lot of good ideas out there, and I'm sorry to the people that I wasn't quite able to get to. So just a lot of good stuff going on. Let me turn it back over to Serpil, and then she's going to help us to kind of close this discussion out.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Lauren, for a great session. That was quite interesting and enlightening. I really appreciate it. Every time we talk, I also learn more.
Good.
And thank you all for joining and spending this time with us. Any last comments you want to give, Lauren? No? Well, I will be sending out a survey, and I would really, really appreciate it if you could please fill that out and let me know how you like the session. And I think we have a question about Lauren's newsletter in there. So if you want to contact her, or if you want to hear from her, we'll have a newsletter going.
That's great.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I really, really hope that you took something away and are learning something. And now you've got at least the starting point from where you can jump off to start some real career planning now.
Awesome. And see you next month. We have a great guest speaker in mind, and we'll let you know who it is. It's going to be a different type of session. But thank you very much. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Arvind. Hi, Sabrina. Thanks.
Hi, Sylvie.